I think fundamentally, if you're talking about how do we secure a blockchain and how much electricity does that take, the reality is that, in my mind, in some sense, proof of work is, it did the thing that it needed to do, which is it proved the technology. It is the proof of concept. But it only makes sense that 10, 12, 15 years later, one of the many geniuses in the crypto space would figure out a more efficient way to run a blockchain.
Welcome everyone to Coinbase. So Okcoin. There's gonna be a lot of Coinbase stuff.
Welcome to Coinbase.
Coinbase.
Yeah.
Coin live with.
You're giving it away. We're gonna buy Coinbase.
Adam, Harrison, and Alex, and we're gonna talk about the Ethereum merge today. We have a good show. Harrison and I are from the listings team. Adam is going to be from our content team. Shreyas is from our product marketing team. We're going to the moon today. And right before we started recording, Harrison was showing us a book that he recently read as we talk about ETH. Harrison, you want to show the book? Oh, how do you feel about that, Adam?
Show the rest. You can't see the bottom.
This incited protest from my counterpart, Adam, here.
Okay. It looks like a very nice drawing that a 14-year-old made in his notebook during social studies.
So Adam does not like Bitcoin.
Reaction.
Okay.
I don't know if I don't like it. I'm good with Bitcoin. We need Bitcoin. This is obviously several whole episodes in and of itself.
Yeah.
We need Bitcoin. We just need it to do Bitcoin things and not other things.
Well,
that's my short version.
Let's start with that. Why don't we go around the horn and talk about what our position is on this whole Ethereum merge? And by the way, we haven't talked or prepped this, so this might be glorious or a disaster. We don't know. Either way, whoever's watching is going to have a lot of fun. So why don't we go around the table? Adam, I kind of want to end with you last, based on the explosiveness of your comments that I think are going to come, which are amazing. Why don't we start with Shreyas? What do you think about this whole ETH merge and for, against, indifferent, don't care, number go up, whatever?
Yeah, so I've been reading a lot into it, and overall, I am for the vision of Ethereum, what it's designed to do, what it should do. So the merge is a good thing. That's where I stand.
Harrison?
Yeah, I would second that. I think the overall the vision for what the merge stands for is a great thing for Ethereum. What it enables in terms of sharding, scalability. I don't like that it puts the power in the hands of the people with the most capital. I don't like that it takes away the democracy that is mining. I also think there's some security sacrifices being made by switching to proof of stake too. But like I said, there are some things that it opens up the doors for that we didn't have with proof of work. So
I'll go, and then we should turn to Adam. I really want Adam to go last here. But Adam, that's a lot of power, which means that whatever you say is what we're going to jump off of into the next topic. So just, with great power comes great responsibility. But I was an Ethereum fan very early on. I remember talking to Vitalik way back in the day when I was at Microsoft. I think I bought my first Ethereum in 2016. So it was just, back when it was.
Did you buy enough?
I did not buy enough. I did not. I bought it at $10 though, but I bought very, very little of it. It was just a little something to play with. And while that, has done me pretty well, I actually converted a lot of my Ethereum into Bitcoin, even though I'm still fairly bullish on Ethereum. I don't like the move to proof of stake at all. And it was before there was a great YouTube video that we'll talk about later on in the show. But I'm very much against the move to proof of stake, namely because I do believe in Ethereum and I do want it to succeed. And I think it's going to be one of the main, if not the main, layer for smart contracts to be built on top of. And I would like that layer to be as kind of any party resistant as possible. That should be a decentralized layer, and proof of stake necessarily centralizes projects over a long period of time. So if you hold, Ethereum over 100 years, it's going to become much more centralized. And we will talk about how it does it coming up. But last word to Adam. Adam, what do you think? Good, bad?
All right. Well, I was on mic, or I was on mute, so you couldn't hear the sound of me grinding my teeth with all of this proof of stake criticism. I don't have an engineering background, so I have done my level best to do all the research on proof of work versus proof of stake and the history of Ethereum, and listening to a lot of for and against about to merge or not to merge. I can tell you, I read the Laura Shin book, The Cryptopians. And what she says in there is that basically the idea of this upgrade from proof of work to proof of stake was an idea that the Ethereum community started considering basically as soon as they launched the network. Like, it's been in the works, or at least under discussion, since 2015. So this is a very, very long time coming. I think it's I'm pro, I'm bullish. Number go up or number not go up. I think this is something the network needs to do. I think the environmental concern, the amount of energy you're consuming, it's a separate topic, and there's like a lot of ins and outs to that. But I think the bottom line is proof of stake uses less electricity than proof of work. And, less is less. That's just, a good thing from an energy consumption environmental perspective. And from the security perspectives, every argument I read about why proof of stake is less secure or more centralized, I feel like you can turn back on proof of work. Like, yeah, I mean, it favors if you have a big stake and then people delegate to you, you become like, like the Bison Trails or whatever, you become like the big validator. But, by the same token, they're publicly traded corporations that all they do is mine Bitcoin. It's not like mining Bitcoin is a cheaper or simple enterprise to get into. So there's some centralization pressure there as well. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's almost a wash. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm really not like a maxi one way or the other. And I'm very comfortable with the idea that there is a limit to how much I know what I'm talking about. But my sense is, within a margin of error, yeah, it's going to be good. Proof of stake. I'm in. Let's go. Cat bags up. That's where I'm at.
Let me jump off there. So you talked about energy, and I think for me this tends to be a fundamental misunderstanding, even in the crypto space. At least, obviously, that's my point of view. Now, my background is in energy. I've actually built power plants before, so this is one of the spaces that I really understand. But I want to draw this illusion, right? This illustration. Have you guys seen those maps, those nighttime maps of the Earth? And you see all the like the lights lighting up in different countries. And there's one very powerful map.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it shows North Korea and South Korea together. Have you seen those maps? And South Korea is lit up at night, and North Korea is all dark. Right? If you look at those maps, one uses fundamentally exponentially more energy than the other. Are we saying that North Korea is better than South Korea because it uses less electricity?
Right. I mean, and that's valid. And I think that that's often the pushback on the proof of work argument is like, listen, there are things we use electricity for because we need to use the electricity for them. And not every use of electricity is inherently a waste of electricity. Like, nobody complains about the electricity that you need to run your fridge or your washing machine or, to broadcast television all over the world 24 hours a day with reruns of like Storage Wars.
Don't hate on Storage Wars.
Yeah, I think it's...
You never know what you can get in that lot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's there for you. It's there for you. Coal-powered Storage Wars is available right now somewhere. So, I think, yeah, Bitcoin is, even aside from the arguments that it's like a good way to bootstrap new alternative energy power plants, which I've heard from people who work in alternative energy, and I buy that. Nevertheless, I think fundamentally, if you're talking about how do we secure a blockchain and how much electricity does that take? The reality is that, in my mind, in some sense, proof of work is, it did the thing that it needed to do, which is it proved the technology. It is the proof of concept. But it only makes sense that 10, 12, 15 years later, one of the many geniuses in the crypto space would figure out a more efficient way to run a blockchain. And I think proof of stake just might represent that, where it's like we can secure a blockchain and use less electricity. We can just save some and, still have a pretty good way, I think, to bootstrap alternative energy sources. It still takes plenty of power, especially as these networks grow. It's just that, we don't necessarily have to use all of it at once.
And Adam, here maybe a follow up related to what you're talking about here with centralization of proof of work versus proof of stake. Do you think that it's easier for someone to acquire 50% of the 51%, I suppose, of the market capitalization of Ethereum, or 51% of the energy required to kind of overthrow one block?
Ooh, walking me into a trap, huh? I used to be a lawyer. I'm familiar with this style of questioning where I can see you with like offhand holding a knife, getting ready.
Here's my knife.
Yeah. Nice. Oh yeah, the bull that looks like it should be on the side of a van in the 70s blasting Led Zeppelin.
Yes,
So,
Led Zeppelin. Adam, I do gotta say, I'm
the thing
your
about
content for us. I love your analogies. They're freaking good. These are amazing.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. I'm just throwing it around. These are just warm up shots for me. But yeah, I think, in terms of understanding, like, let's say somebody sets out, Vladimir Putin decides Ethereum has upgraded to proof of stake. Let's just buy it, right? Let's just take this thing over because I have nothing else to do and it's Tuesday. And, there's nobody in a foreign country who I feel like trying to destroy their reputation or ruin their election. Let's buy Ethereum. So how would that work? So fundamentally, I think the idea is that you can attack a proof of stake network by just buying up all the coins. But of course, when you think about that in a practical reality, the coins are not all sitting in one place where you just go and get them and then you're done. Some are on Kraken, some are on Coinbase, some are on Uniswap. They're here, they're there, they're everywhere. And you have to actually go and buy them. And as you start to buy up the supply, the price goes up. So the cost of that attack goes up as you are executing the attack. And the market responds by saying, oh, wow, the price of ETH is going up. And so basically trying to scale the wall of buying 51% of the network, the wall goes up as you're trying to climb it because the price of ETH will go up as you're trying to buy 51% of all the circulating ETH. So I suppose there's a way to model how much it would actually cost. But I think the bottom line is that, like, it gets exponentially more expensive as you go. Put aside the fact that it is like something that you could detect as it was happening, like this one wallet address or this group of wallet addresses that we know are associated with this government or with this person seem to be trying to buy up all the ETH. Somebody do something. Even putting that aside and saying nobody intervened in any way. And I don't know exactly what the intervention would be. But God knows Ethereum has been attacked before and has had to respond, like way back when the DAO got hacked. Put aside whatever white hat kind of thing they would try and come up with. Just by the mechanism itself, the cost of that, just buying 51% of the ETH, I think is astronomically more expensive than it seems if you just sat down and said, well, ETH is $2,000 a coin and this is how much is circulating. So 2,000 times this equals how much you would need to buy the network. The price would go up as you were buying it because it's a market process. And so the cost of that would be exponentially more expensive than it appears. And that in and of itself, I think, gives you a little extra security. That's my understanding of how this is sort of a self-protecting system.
Shreyas, what do you think?
Yeah, and no, and I definitely think you make valid points.
Sorry, what?
What do you
Go ahead, Shreyas. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like there's one distinction that I always keep like playing out in my mind is like, what is the purpose for what these two things were designed, right? Like, I mean, Bitcoin and Ethereum, I feel there's two things are designed for two different things. Ethereum was more like, I think of it like it was more meant to be a supercomputer for different purposes, versus Bitcoin more like a destruction to the financial system. What Bitcoin needs to do is completely different than what Ethereum needs to do. And that's why like that centralization piece and the decentralization piece, like I think they're both right in their own places.
Yeah, for me, I'm listening to the discussion that the 51% attack. is going to be hard. However, let's actually turn to the podcast that we talked about. There's a great podcast by this guy named Checkmate. That's his non-doxed name. I don't know, Adam, if you know his real name, but um, there's his basic premise is this: that let's discuss what happened with Tornado Cash. Tornado Cash is a mixer, right? It's a mixer of various coins. It got put on the OFAC list. Basically, the U.S. government saying you cannot transact with coins that are coming from Tornado Cash. Then people start trolling each other and sending each other a little bit of coins. So there are accounts at 0.1 ETH or whatever is coming from Tornado Cash. The whole account is locked. When we look at this guy did this analysis of ETH, this ETH, the second ETH, the staked ETH stakers, and most of them are coming. Coinbase has like 25%. Other Lido has a lot, and basically you're getting centralized staking power over, call it 6 or 7 parties. It doesn't even matter, 10 parties, even 20 parties, but it's actually much more concentrated than that. It's like 5 to 7 parties are going to hold 50 to 60% of ETH staking power, essentially. And he did a good job talking about staking versus mining, which I thought was a very powerful example. Mining, you have a mining machine and you point to different nodes and you can switch and point. With staking, very few people know how to stake themselves. So they send their coins to a Coinbase to stake for them. A Coinbase custodies those coins. And we saw in the disclosures of Coinbase that says that assets that Coinbase has that are users' assets are actually Coinbase's. Same thing that happened to Celsius, right? So those assets aren't really your assets because you don't know, not your keys in this case, definitely not your coins. Celsius is a great example of this.
Right.
So when you're going to have a centralized, you're essentially going to have 5 or 6 companies that are going to hold staking power in ETH. And when the government comes to these guys, like you mentioned, U.S. regulated miners, these are U.S. regulated companies, and says you cannot transact or you have to stop these transactions on Ethereum, it very quickly becomes government controlled without being government controlled of taking over the network and buying 51% of the coins. And he did a much better job of illustrating this than I, but this was my original kind of thesis for why proof of work fundamentally is a more government and entity resilient chain for certain use cases, right? We could talk about use cases. Maybe Ethereum doesn't need to be government resistant. Maybe it just needs to be a decentralized, smart contract ledger. But before you guys respond, just listen to this one example. Let's look at Russia, Ukraine, right? Regardless of where, like I am Ukrainian, so I'm very biased, but regardless of where you stand on the issue, the U.S. and the Western countries use the SWIFT system to weaponize it, to use it as a kind of weapon of war, kicking Russia off the SWIFT system. So very easily, U.S. and other governments can say, hey, we don't like a certain government, right? You, as an American company, must stop transacting with a certain region or government in the world. Now it goes from Tornado Cash to a Russia plus Iran plus, let's say, China and so on. And the U.S. government can now come to these 5 or 6 companies that are staking the most on ETH and saying, you must stop. Now we no longer have a decentralized global chain. And this will happen, guys. It's just a matter of when, not if, based on the current geopolitics.
Yeah, I mean, well, Alex, first of all, I didn't realize you were Ukrainian. So, I mean, obviously what's going on there, I don't know if it bears saying, but I hope your family's okay and that, everything's okay for you with that situation. I mean, it's awful and it just won't stop. So, I made the Putin joke earlier.
No, no worries, no
Ukrainian.
worries.
But, yeah. But look, I mean, we all work for Okcoin, OKX, and the company has its own position on government regulations. And so I don't know necessarily that we want to go down the rabbit hole of saying what we all think is appropriate or not appropriate for government to be doing in the crypto space. So this kind of boils down, and this was sort of, I didn't watch all of the Checkmate video, but I watched part of it, and then I read his Twitter thread that he sort of directed you. He said, like, the video is explaining this Twitter thread. And a lot of what he was complaining about was that this enables the government to force, crypto protocols on Ethereum, for example, to comply with federal law. And so, if that's the concern, then I think really it boils down to, well, how government resistant do you want to be? I mean, the bottom line is, like, we all talk about having institutions involved in the crypto space, having ordinary investors involved in the crypto space. If you want those people to feel safe and to participate, then there has to be at least some part of this space that is not the Wild West. I read a story that there are pension funds now, state pension funds in the US that are investing in DeFi. They are not going to do that if there is not some sense that there are some rules to this game. And so, I think in terms of talking about, I often see the phrase thrown around like onboarding the next billion users to crypto. Well, the next billion users coming into crypto are not software engineers, and this stuff is complicated for them to understand and difficult for them to use. And they need to be made to feel that this is safe. And having some measurement of government regulation in the space so that somebody is watching and punishing bad guys, I think is going to be part of it in some form or fashion. And so the question is, it really comes down to, like, where do you land on the government regulation spectrum? Do you think there should be none? Do you think there should be a little? Or do you think that the government should be running the cryptoverse? And that is sort of, to me, at the heart of this debate. What is an appropriate level of government involvement in the crypto space?
Yeah, but I think the point in those both of those arguments is like where the government comes in and what they do, right? I mean, Tornado Cash, the example that Alex mentioned, it's like it isn't inherently a bad thing. It's just protecting privacy with code, right? Like Vitalik came out and said, like, he sent some money over to Russia for his friends and family, right? Like the government just misunderstood that whole technology and said, "Oh, this is like for money launderers." Boom, ban. U.S. is not doing anything about it. That's not the right case. Like that's what I think the whole contradiction is. Like, yes, government intervention is good. Some rules around it is good, but with proper homework, with proper advisors, and with proper help from experts that understand stuff and can limit the regulations accordingly, rather than just one blank rule for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I think the concern for me, like, putting my lawyer hat back on and thinking, okay, if Tornado Cash came to me and said, they shut us down, what do we do? The part of the case that makes me cringe, where it's like, guys, I think we might be in trouble here, is they did business they operated in the United States. They did business with North Korea in violation of US law, and they made money from it. It's very hard to do that and then say, hey, you know what? Privacy. Yeah, privacy is important. But I mean, look, fundamentally, if you want to do business in the US, you got to follow US law. And the North Koreans were using that service and they knew it. I read stories that there was one incident where North Korean addresses were running stolen funds through Tornado Cash. So the Tornado Cash validators raised the transaction fees to like 99%. So they effectively tricked the North Koreans into giving all of the stolen money to Tornado Cash, which I only mentioned to say, like, they knew the North Koreans were using the service and they were like, well, privacy, we can't stop them. I mean, look, the privacy thing is valid, but the bottom line is, from the perspective of the US government, you operated in the US, you violated US law, and you made money from it. And the last 10 times, 10, according to TRM Labs, there's a guy who I follow on LinkedIn, Ari Redboard, who is I think the chief legal officer for TRM Labs. And he said that the last 10 North Korean hacks, they laundered at least some of the money through Tornado Cash. So that's not once or twice, that's 10 times. At a certain point, the government is like, okay, I don't know what you expect us to do. And, you're going to get in trouble. And so, like, I think that, to me, the lesson was, listen, you're going to have to think in a grown-up way about setting some limits around who you allow to run this service, use this service, if you want to run it in the US. I think it just comes down to that. Like, you cannot just say privacy, so we're exempt from US law. You may think so, but I don't think the US government shares that view. And that, to me, was the lesson of this. You're going to have some basic AML compliance.
Yeah, and I think I think that you're making really good points, Adam, and I agree with them. But I also would say that Tornado Cash sits on a different end of the spectrum than the entire Ethereum blockchain, where most people that participate there are good actors. They're trying to add value to society, to the Ethereum ecosystem, and so yes, the government's very good at stopping money laundering, stopping bad actors, terrorists, etc. But I feel like they're also not the best at promoting um, activities that increase the welfare of all of their citizens. At least in my experience, I haven't seen them do the best job in this area. So going back to what Shreyas was talking about, I don't trust them to make the best decisions when it comes to regulation. And I think you mentioned this earlier, like education of our government is the best way to go forward. So I hope before they make any rash decisions when it comes to regulation, there is an opportunity for education moving forward. I'm optimistic. I don't think that will happen, but still hopeful at least.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that there's a phrase you hear, which is regulation by enforcement. And that's, of course, where it's like, we're not going to tell you what the rules are. We're only going to tell you that you're in trouble for breaking them. It seems a little bit unfair. Coinbase had a number of incidents with this where they went to the SEC and asked for guidance. And the SEC was like, nah, we don't really have time right now. We'll get back to you. And then they didn't hear anything back until the SEC was like, yeah, so if you go forward with this plan, we're going to prosecute you. And by then, Coinbase had sunk like a bunch of time and money into developing. For example, they had an earn program where you could earn yield on USDC. And right when they announced that they were about to launch it, they got a letter from the SEC called a Wells letter that said, if you do this, we're going to prosecute you. So they had to shut the program down. So it's like there needs to be a little bit more of a back and forth. I mean, for example, I don't know what communication went on between regulators and Tornado Cash, but did anybody just like reach out even on Twitter and say, listen, this needs to stop? You know, was there any attempt at saying, hey, US government over here, you may have heard of us. If you keep doing this, we're going to have an issue, you know, like even in the Scorsese movies, right? Like when the first thing you hear from the gangster is like, listen, I know what you're doing. I know you're on my territory. I know you're messing with me. Cut it out or we're going to have a problem. So where is that? Like, just, you know, let us know, like, let's have an open back and forth about this. And I would definitely like to see more of that. I mean, not all regulation is created equal. That's certainly true. And, I think it is super duper important that we get this right. And at the very least, I think like when Biden made that executive announcement about crypto last year, there was a huge sigh of relief because at least he wasn't like, we're going to step on crypto's neck. This has to stop. He was like, this is an important innovation. This is an interesting technology. There's a lot of good to be done here. We need to figure out how to regulate it. My response to that was, okay, fair enough. But like, I think what really startled people about the Tornado Cash thing was they just woke up and were like, Tornado Cash over. And there seemed to be no warning or no effort at anything between nothing and that. And that I think is, that kind of regulation by enforcement, that's tough for people because, tell me what the rules are and I'll play by the rules, I think was kind of the response.
Yeah. And I think most people in crypto would follow that ethos as well. But maybe we went pretty deep down this rabbit hole. Maybe we should switch back to proof of stake.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the merge on the merge cast.
Let's come back to the merge. Let's come back to the merge. That's what's on everyone's mind. So let's answer some questions and think about how it affects people, right?
Merge
and also let's address the elephant in the room. Let's also address the elephant in the room while we're at that. The hard fork potential.
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be another rabbit hole. At some point, shouldn't we should do what is the merge, right?
All right, let's do what is the merge. Adam, what is the merge?
Okay, what is the merge?
All right, 60 seconds. The merge is the Ethereum network upgrade from a proof of work consensus mechanism to a proof of stake consensus mechanism. As I mentioned, Ethereum has been talking about this in some form or fashion for years. And it's now ready to go. It's scheduled for a specific block on the blockchain that, based on the hash rate, will vary a little bit, but probably sometime on September 15th or 16th. So coming in just a few weeks. And the reason this is called the merge is because in order to test this upgrade, they're going to do it, first of all, it should be noted, without shutting down the network, which I think is remarkable. Because if you can imagine, like, I remember in the 90s where it was like, to upgrade Microsoft Word, you had to turn off your computer for like 4 hours, and now they're going to upgrade this blockchain that does like $1 trillion of economic activity, and they're not going to shut it down for even a moment. They're going to do it completely on the fly, which is a remarkable technical achievement if it works. So they've been testing it. So what they did was they set up a proof of stake chain called the Beacon chain that is now running. It's basically just for staking ETH2 and running validator nodes. And they've been test merging it with several Ethereum test nets. One is called Gurley, one is called Ropsten. I don't know all the names. The names are extremely weird. They are all like Lord of the Rings names. But they're testing, they've been test merging them with one after another. They've been some kinks. They've been working out the kinks. There was a 7-block reorg on one of the tests that scared people to death. They fixed that. And so the last test was the Gurley test merge. They merged with the Gurley testnet a few days ago. It went well. And so it's on. So there's a series of upgrades that Vitalik was calling ETH2 and then realized, there we go, Rinkeby, Gurley, Kovan, Ropsten. It seems they all seem like words that are spelled backwards. Well, I don't know where these names come from. But Vitalik originally said it's going to be ETH 2.0 and we're going to do all these upgrades at once. And then they very quickly figured out that might be biting off a little more than they could chew. So it's been broken out into steps. Step 1 is the merge. And that's the upgrade to proof of stake. That's coming on September 15th. So that's the merge.
And Adam, I know you mentioned you weren't engineering. You don't have an engineering background, but maybe one thing you could help me understand, since you've done more research than I have. So the execution layer is remaining proof of work. That's what I understand. And then the consensus mechanism is changing to proof of stake. Could you explain how that's possible?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that the consensus layer is changing and the execution layer is not. My understanding is that, I don't know, is the execution layer running on proof of work? That's a little beyond me. My understanding is that the execution layer is staying the same, and that is why the merge will not reduce transaction fees, because whatever mechanism you use to achieve consensus, you still have the same capacity for actually executing those transactions once you have consensus that the transactions are valid. So my understanding is that the execution layer will stay the same, but my understanding was that proof of work and proof of stake were terms that referred to the consensus layer specifically.
Yeah, and I think I think the way that
I want to interject just a little bit. So Adam, you did a very good job explaining like what is the merge, but I want to talk just a little bit about like why that is happening, why that is important. One, because that is like Ethereum's vision to scale the transactions. 2, it reduces energy consumption by 99%. And then 3, it reduces the issuance of ETH, which is equivalent to a Bitcoin triple halving. So those are like the 3 things that are happening because of why the merge is happening.
Right on. Yes, all good points. So yeah, as we were discussing earlier, proof of work is the same consensus mechanism that Bitcoin uses, and it works and it's very secure, but it also uses a lot of electricity. And so proof of stake, rather than having every computer on the network race to validate transactions, it picks one validator at random to validate each transaction. And so that saves a lot of electricity, because all the other computers that would otherwise be trying to validate the transaction just don't. So the network saves, in this case, 99% of the electricity that would otherwise consume. So yeah. And then the triple halvening thing is like, Alex is bristling.
That poor argument.
Model spaceship off screen. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that feeling. The skin crawl feeling. I feel like you're off screen, like crunching that thing in your hands.
I don't know if you're coming back from the moon or you're just flying around the Earth at this point.
I'm just flying around.
I'm just waiting for him to take it and fly it straight down. Like, no.
He's just flying
Yeah.
around the Earth.
I'm just flying around in a spaceship. It can detach.
Just have a good
too.
time, man.
Yeah, like I'm having a look. It's like that's the old boom, it detached. We're just now in the space shuttle. No, I'm the electricity and the energy argument just
Cute.
kills me. It's like, are less calories more or better than more calories? Well, maybe. What if you're trying to gain weight? No. If you're trying to bulk up? No. If you're an athlete? Absolutely not. Michael Phelps by himself, like, would consume 20,000 calories per day. Does that mean he's overweight? No. It's a very empty argument to me. I'm not to like knock. It's used a lot, right? And it's maybe not empty, just oversimplistic. It doesn't take into account why we use energy or the emissions, right? If everything is 100% solar, and this solar energy you couldn't harvest anywhere else, who cares that it uses energy? If it's all using solar in the middle of the Sahara desert.
There are a couple of things on that. I guess the first is, number one, the amount of energy we have in the power grid for Earth is finite.
No.
It's like,
but that is a false assumption. Right there. There's a very false assumption. We have infinite potential energy with nuclear and renewables. And those
potential, but in terms of what's in the grid right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. We only have right. So what happens is, like, for example, in some of these towns that have set up big Bitcoin mining rigs in like New York and Texas, what people have seen who live around there is their electricity prices go up because the mining rigs are consuming a lot of electricity. So like, I think there is a consideration of like, yeah, the potential energy of what we could do, yes, but the reality is that we only have so much that we can do right now at the moment while we are trying to run the blockchain today. And so, I think it's just a practical concern from that perspective.
We should definitely have another episode on energy. Well, I'm going to table this just.
Yeah. Energy is a different argument.
Yeah, no, I think this is a fascinating conversation. I want to do it more, but it's definitely its own episode, at least one episode.
Yes.
I'm excited that you have this energy background because I want to hear this, and I'm like, I'm very bullish about the idea of, like, especially in the US, my whole life, the story has been, we're shutting down these factories. All the jobs are moving to China. All the factories are gone. We're a post-industrial country. There's all of this opportunity to take this industrial infrastructure and turn it to, crypto mining or crypto validating, like use that capacity to get involved in running this sort of new internet. And I'm fascinated by that, but it has some practical implications that you cannot like pretend out of existence. It has to be thought through. So it's definitely, I think, a fascinating conversation. And I'm in. And like I say, I'm just trying to understand.
Good.
Yeah. I'm also like very curious about that energy argument because I grew up in India and we had like 3 hours of like they call it like load shedding, because the electricity grid has just too much load on it. And I remember being on Sundays at home, like on the hottest freaking day in summer, and I'm just like sweating because there's this, I can't even turn on the fan and there's everything outside is humid. So, it's like, I've been in those situations. So it's like, how do we really say that we have a lot of energy for mining around the world for a currency and technology that will be used globally?
Yeah, guys, let's do this because there's a lot of misconceptions on both sides. A lot of Bitcoiners are like, "Oh, well, you flare methane gas, da da da." It's also kind of bullshit. So let's go through and let's have a separate. I don't want to take us off track. We have 10 minutes left, but let's definitely do an energy conversation. I can explain to us why you're feeling what you're feeling. A lot of it is not energy use. A lot of it is grid architecture and how they're interconnected. There's like 3 or 4 parts of electricity: distribution, generation, interchange, and then you have dispatch. I can explain all these things, how they actually work, where you have line losses, where you don't. We can go deep engineering, and then you guys will start to see how arguments of both sides are too simplistic, and there's an actual middle ground where I think Bitcoin plays a magnificent role in renewables. But let's save that till to that next discussion.
All right, cool. Yeah,
Love
I'm
it.
in.
Love it.
All right, so where do we go
So
next?
I want to actually ask a question, because this is like one of my, like, biggest interest in the Ethereum ecosystem is NFTs. So from my reading and understanding, there's a very high potential for, like, if there is a hard fork, there will be two versions of every single NFT, which will be a proof of work NFT and then a proof of stake NFT. What do you guys feel about
All right, so let's do high level. What is the hard fork? You're talking about like the ETH
that?
POW?
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, um, years ago when Ethereum was first starting out, they had the first ever DAO that was formed on Ethereum, and it was decentralized autonomous organization where people could buy DAO tokens and be involved in the governance of an organization on chain, a business entity on chain. It was the first of its kind. It was promptly hacked, and all of the money was drained out of the smart contract through a vulnerability. And Ethereum, in order to pay back, they were so concerned that this was going to undermine confidence in the blockchain that in order to repay everyone who was victimized by this hack, they hard forked the network to repair the vulnerability and repay the people who had been robbed. Now, there's a group of people who splintered off who said, we don't want to be involved in a hard fork. You invested in a DAO, you lost your money. It was a speculative investment. That's tough luck for you. We shouldn't be doing this hard fork. So they stayed behind and continued running the old blockchain that was called and remains Ethereum Classic. So that is still up to this day. I don't know if there's anything on it. I don't even know how to use Ethereum Classic, but the coin trades. And one of the people who was a big proponent of the Ethereum Classic hard fork was this one crypto miner whose name escapes me, but he has come back all these years later now that Ethereum is contemplating another hard fork in order to upgrade from proof of work to proof of stake. And he said, we're going to do it again. I don't want to upgrade to proof of stake. I want to keep running proof of work. So we're going to do another hard fork, and that's going to be called ETH POW. And basically, this would be like after the merge, they're going to drop what's called a logic bomb, where they're going to make it so difficult to process transactions on the Ethereum proof of work chain that it will become essentially impossible to validate a transaction. So it's sort of like they're dropping a bomb on the railroad tracks. Sometime before the logic bomb hits the proof of work chain, this guy wants to hard fork off, split, go in another direction, and start a new Ethereum proof of work chain that continues to function. So that
Isn't that
brings us.
Justin Sun is the name of the guy?
What's his name?
Justin Sun?
No, it is not Justin Sun.
That's
Justin
not what I thought
apparently
we were
has,
talking about. Okay.
yeah, Justin has announced that he's going to like help or list the token or whatever, but list the coin, I should say. But yeah, essentially it creates all these questions. And I guess one of them is about, Shrivas, as you were saying, will there be two copies of your NFT, one on this blockchain and one on that blockchain? The answer to that is, I don't know. Is there somebody with more engineering here who can speak to this? Who's got the nerd answer for this?
I think the nerd answer from everything that I've read is yes. There will, like, if there is a hard fork, there will be two versions of the NFT. And now there's another like speculation of like which one will be proven more valuable, like as we go. Because correct, would it be like, because like say CryptoPunks comes on proof of stake, now this is the first time a CryptoPunk is on proof of stake, so it's more valuable, versus is the actual original CryptoPunk that was mined like on the proof of work chain more economically valuable?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. There are some precedents for like there's an artist named Ryder Rips who made a project where he just copy pasted all of the Bored Apes and made a new Bored Apes collection and called it like Ryder Apes or something like that. And and made some money off of it. Now he's in litigation with the Bored Ape Yacht Club, but that's another episode for sure.
Rider Apes is another episode for sure.
Yeah, but so like, look, there's some precedent for saying, yeah, here's the real Bored Apes, and here's a copy that somebody made that's not the real thing. And so I think that my guess is that people moving forward on the merged Ethereum proof of stake network, the canonical Ethereum network, will have the more valuable NFTs. And if there is this set of shadow NFTs that goes on ETH POW, people will know what that is. And my sense is that it won't be worth as much because it won't be connected to Ethereum. But that's a guess.
What
So
about
what
DeFi?
else?
What about DeFi? Where are we at with DeFi going to proof of
With
stake?
DeFi? Well, I mean, to me, it's the most bullish thing for DeFi because the thing that destroys DeFi, at least for like small time yield farmers like me, is that if I'm putting up $1,000 and I'm planning to get 10 or 20% yield on that, and then the transaction fee to make that deposit is like $50, it crushes my yield for like 6 months or something. You know what I mean? Like you end up spending half the money you expect to make on the transaction fee. So if you upgrade the network and you add the shards, and now Ethereum can process 100,000 transactions per second, and layer 2 is cheaper and faster and more effective, then DeFi does nothing except get more efficient. And I'm personally very bullish on DeFi just as a concept. Like once the UX gets there, people are going to figure out like it's a money video game. I tell this story all the time that like I was babysitting my girlfriend's kids. She was like, I have to do a call, go in the room with the kids, don't let them come out. So I went in the room and they had their iPads and I had my phone. And one was playing Minecraft, one was playing NBA 2K, and I was reading about Yearn Finance. And I looked at them and I was like, yeah, we're all playing our video games. So, I think it's something where once it catches on, it's going to be enormous. And the fact that you can now do the transactions for a few cents on layer 2 really, really helps. So I think it's huge for DeFi and certainly for like all the other applications for decentralized social networking. Nobody's going to pay $10 to send one tweet. So like, if the cost of that goes down to a cent or a fraction of a cent, all of a sudden it can work, and the same with gaming. So I think it opens it up to a lot of smaller users and, especially young people who like don't have a ton of money, but want to get involved and are sort of the arbiters of culture and what's cool. I think it's tremendously bullish for that.
I think that's like overall like great summary of like how DeFi is like going to improve a lot. But I think there's one thing that we haven't really discussed in there is that the gas fees necessarily aren't going to go down with the merge. Layer 2 scaling is what takes us even further to that whole scalability argument.
Right on.
And
yeah. So layer 2.
Improvement.
Yeah, layer 2 and then the addition of the shards. My understanding is that once it's all said and done, once you have okay. So we're coming to the end. But I guess the merge is just to say like the first in a series of upgrades that will end with Ethereum being able to process 100,000 transactions a second. And will, in addition to making Ethereum mainnet more efficient, will make layer 2 faster and less expensive. Okay. So that's a huge piece of this as well. And I'm excited about it, whatever everybody else feels. I'm here for it. I'm team ETH.
I'm also team ETH. I'm looking forward to the merge.
To the moon.
It's gonna be good for it. The whole
Alex's coal-powered moon rocket.
No, it's nuclear powered. Let's be honest.
It's moon powered, baby. That's right.
So you guys are supporters of the merge. Will you?
It's powered by feelings. It's hopium powered.
Adam and Treas, will you be holding native ETH and accepting the ETHW airdrop? Given your stance. Okay or not okay?
I'm not even sure it's going to happen, if I'm honest. Like if I were in Vegas, if I were in like, what's it called? The
odds making?
Yeah. What's the DeFi prediction protocol? If I were on there and it was, what's that? Augur. Yeah, if I were in the auger pool and like betting on whether there's going to be an ETH POW chain, I don't even know if it's going to happen, honestly. It feels like a big pain. I don't know like who's really bullish about this. Circle has already said they won't put USDC on the chain. I think it's going to be like a rinky dink little nothing at the end of the day. It sounds like it's a lot more fun to tweet about it than it is to sit there and try and engineer that thing and hope that anyone shows up. I'm really wondering whether it's going to happen. But
I have a different opinion. I think that it will happen. Accepting the tokens is okay.
yeah, you're going to take it. I don't want it, honestly. I don't want to be
I'll
involved.
take it because it's just there, but I'll sell it over for native proof of stake ETH.
Yeah, you'll dump it the first chance you get. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well,
That's
we'll
why I
see.
said it's okay, because ultimately it's like, what do you want to do with it? If you want to keep it on proof of work, whatever, that's your problem. But like, I want to use it for everything proof of stake.
I'll wait till it gets to $12 and then I'll sell it for enough to buy a sandwich. How about that?
That's an expensive sandwich, depending on what you're buying.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I think we're at time. Alex, land your rocket ship. Let's do this.
All right, guys. Well, I think it was a good discussion. We kind of skipped some of the okay, not okay, but I think we've done a lot of the ETH okay, not okay, merge or not to merge, to accept the airdrop or not to accept the airdrop, and to hopium or not to hopium. I think we're all in on my beautiful hopium ride here. We all want number to eventually go up, hopefully with adoption, use cases, and the overall beautiful decentralized world going up.